This is all 100% true, but no one ever believes me. In 8th grade, wake up one morning before school. It's still dark out. Assume I must have woken up too early. About to go back to sleep when my alarm goes off and scares the shit out of me. It's the middle of spring. It shouldn't be dark. Wonder if I'm still dreaming. Super confused. No idea what's going on. Mom comes into my room like usual. She seems really out of it too. Ask her what's going on. Says to get up and get ready for school. She doesn't even mention that it's dark. Do some things that convince me that I'm not dreaming, i.e. pinching/reading. Decide to just go with it since I have no idea what else to do. Get ready for school. Clock says it's about 6:45 a.m. Definitely should be getting light out, but it's not. Dad and younger siblings also seem really out of it. No one is talking much. Everyone's just shuffling around getting ready. Even younger brother doesn't want to say much. We all head off to school. Nope, still dark. Bus comes to pick us up. Same fucking thing. Everyone's out of it. No one's talking. Sit next to a friend of mine. Ask him what the hell's going on. He shrugs and acts like he doesn't know what I'm on about. What the hell, .x? We get to school. It's almost 7:30 a.m. The sun isn't up. I start getting more and more freaked out. By 10 a.m., I'm literally panicking. It's still dark and no sign of dawn. No one is talking about it. Ask the teacher what the fuck. She also acts like I'm talking gibberish. Don't know what else to do. End up just pretending to be okay with it. Hang out with friends at lunch. Quietest I've ever heard it. Go home. Spend the night in my room. Say I'm not feeling good, but really, I just feel like I'm losing my mind. Like, seriously, I thought I had completely lost my mind. Eventually pass out despite being panicked. The second my head hits the pillow, it's morning. Feels like I've just slept 8 hours. It's light out. Instant relief. Mom comes in, gets me up. Tell her about my dream. Huh, maybe here's your way of dealing with yesterday. Stomach drops. What? You were in such a strange mood all day, Anon. You just sulked around like something was wrong. Get up. Turn on news. It's tomorrow. Yesterday happened. I was not dreaming. Talk to everyone, and here's the version they told me. I woke up and wouldn't say anything to anyone. Was really distant and cold all day. Everyone said they thought something must have been wrong. I kept talking about how the sun wouldn't come up. Parents thought I was high. Friends thought I was possessed. No one remembers the day the way I do. No idea what happened that day in 8th grade. I have a story about when me and my wife had a child. She leaves. Child pushes me to the point I had to give her up because she made me look insane. I couldn't find my wife. Doctors were telling me things about the baby that were impossible. Baby did not eat for a week, yet doctors say the baby was fine. Made 0 sense. After the ordeal, I checked myself into a mental health spot for a few days. Ended up stuck there for 3 years. Lost everything. Finally back on my feet, but never heard from my wife again. That baby was not right, and it fooled the doctors, and it made me a fool. 2 a.m. Be outside at friend's place. Lives by some backcountry woods. By the shed in the yard, merely feet from the woods. We're talking, having a smoke, which is why we were out there at 2 a.m. Keep hearing odd snapping of twigs. Must be an animal or something. Snapping is heavier. Goes from twigs to the crushing of large branches and old logs. Footsteps are audible upon touching soft woodland soil. I couldn't help but feel that this was fucked up. Hear an absolutely inhuman cry. Mix of a guttural snarl and a disembodied screech, cadenced like a shrieking roar. Put out cigarette, pull self onto roof of shed, pull him up. We both lie down flat. We were both in the mindset of play dead, stay ahead. Making absolutely no noise, hear footsteps circle around the shed a bit. Only run for it if it's indisputable that we've been found. It walks around by the shed for a few, feels like an hour. Makes a few more of the same screams whilst doing so. The noise was simply unearthly. I've never heard anything like it besides then. Eventually, walks back into the woods. Hear it go off elsewhere. We wait about 15 minutes. Drop off the shed onto our feet. Absolutely combat sprint into the house. I still don't have the slightest as to what it was. I wasn't about to shine a light on it and give us away. It was clearly not afraid of us. And frankly, I'm well convinced that we were the prey of the scenario. We didn't have any real predator animals in those woods whatsoever. Anybody on X have any ideas? I think I've posted these before, but whatever. I have 3 stories to tell from the house that I grew up in. 2 stories were experiences I've had, and 1 is an experience that my sister had. Quick background. House was built as a duplex in the 30s. Grandparents bought it and converted it into a single-family home in the 50s or 60s. My parents bought it from them in the mid-90s. Both my grandma and my mom admit to seeing shadow figures and hearing banging throughout the house. And witnessing the dog and cats wake up from a dead sleep to hiss or whine before leaving an empty room. I used to hear a lot of banging from the basement too. There was one part that I refused to go in, and sometimes I would run up the stairs because I felt like I would die if I stayed down there any longer. Anyway, stories. Number 1. B7 when we move in. Mom throws a sleepover party for me. Says it'll help make the house feel like it's ours. Some kids from school come over. We play in the snow for a bit and do whatever else 7-year-olds did back in the 90s. It gets late and we set up to sleep in the living room. The light has a dimmer switch and it's set to the lowest setting so we don't trip over each other on the way to the bathroom. Tired, but I can't sleep. Feel like something is watching us. Sit up and look around. Notice some figure in the shadows by the hallway. It looks like a boy about our age who is squatting down. He has no facial and physical features either. Just a black mass, but the shape of his body is darker than the shadows he's hiding in. Count heads, and everyone who is invited is asleep in their sleeping bags. Feel like I need to say something to this kid, but don't want to wake anyone up. So I just lay there, having a staring contest with this shadow, until I eventually fall asleep. In the morning, ask if anyone else got up last night, and if they saw anything weird. Kids are being kids and don't give a fuck, because cartoons are on. Assume I was the only one who saw the shadow kid then, and went to go play. I suck at drawing, but the next story is easier to tell you when you can picture the layout of the rooms. Number 2. Now 14 or 15. Years of random noises and movements out of the corner of my eyes, and strange smells have happened. Got pretty used to it at this point. I have a real fucked up sleep schedule during the summer. It's going on 4 a.m. and I'm waiting for a game to finish downloading on my Xbox 360. Decide to take a nap while it finishes. Lay down in bed with my sister's cat at my feet. Start to doze off when I hear fast footsteps in the other room. They're heavy but light. Sounds like a kid running through the room. Stops right at the doorway leading into the bedroom. Red line marks the path, but there's no sounds, like heavy breathing or huffing, like you would expect to hear from anyone at any age running. Whoever it is isn't saying anything either. My sister is 6 at this point, has a habit of sleepwalking. That's relevant in the next story. I assume it is her within the few seconds that it takes for me to open my eyes. Much to my surprise, there's no one at the doorway. The room is completely empty. A bit spooked, but I try to shake it off as a dream, or my mind playing tricks on me, since I haven't slept well in weeks. However, the cat is with me. Her fur is standing straight up on her back, and she's all hunched over with her ears pulled back. She lets out a low, almost growling-like meow, while cautiously peering into the other room. I get up to check things out. The door to the other room is still closed. Sister is asleep on the sofa. Parents still asleep in their room. Dogs are stretched out in the back room. Go back to my bedroom, confused, but I shake it off because, hey, my game downloaded. My sister's cat refused to leave my bed for like 2 hours afterwards. Final story. This is all told from my perspective as witness, because the events actually happened to my sister. Number 3. From about the ages of 4 to 9, my sister refused to sleep in a room. As soon as it got dark, she wouldn't go into her room alone. She would cry and yell if anyone tried to open the closet door too, regardless of the time of day. At first, she was a bit too young to really explain why she was so scared. But when she was 6, she started talking about the shadow man who lived in the closet. She said things about how he looked funny, made strange noises, and talked in a weird way that made her really scared. My parents assumed it was some phase that she was going through due to moving, even though we moved when she was an infant. My parents tried multiple times to try to make her feel comfortable. We switched bedrooms 2 to 3 times. My parents painted and redecorated her room each time. Placed crucifixes and a picture of Jesus on the wall. Tried saying prayers with her before bed to try to calm her down. No matter which room she was in, or how the room looked, or what they did, she refused to go into after dark. She would always fall asleep on the sofa with the TV on. Her sleepwalking developed around 7 to 8 when my parents would try to relocate her to her bedroom once she fell asleep. But she would just get up and move to the living room again without saying anything, or even seeming aware that she was doing so. She also started having nightmares around that age too. She would wake up screaming bloody murder in the middle of the night, and was convinced the shadow man learned how to open doors and could get her now. This was when my parents decided to get the house blessed. She was reluctant, but finally was able to sleep in her room afterwards. However, a priest had to come out yearly to bless her room, or she would start getting scared of the shadow man again. That happened for about another 3 years. She vaguely remembers any of this ever happening. What you're about to read is not my OC. It's a story I once read here on X, but it's been so long that I can't even remember if it was the original story or a screen cap of it. I've given up hoping it was a screen cap. Despite it not being my story, it will still be written in first-person format, as that's the way I read it. Anything I'm not sure about will be put in parentheses, and anything I made up myself to fill gaps, or make more sense of it, will be put in brackets. It all started when I was a child living in the town of Dean, USA. I was 7 years old, out in the garden playing with my sister, when my father suddenly came out the door with his rifle. Mom was right behind him and told us to go inside and close the door. We heard some gunshots. We didn't see anything, but when they stopped, I could clearly hear my father whisper, "We'll just tell the kids it was a badger." I forgot all about that in a matter of weeks, but it came back one night when I was walking through the local forest back home from a friend. I was about 12 years old, and his older brother had told us that there was a monster living in those woods. I didn't believe it. But then, too far from my friend to go back, I started hearing twigs breaking. Naturally, I sped up a bit, and so did the breaking twigs. Something was following me, but I didn't want to assure it that I knew of its presence, so I acted natural. I kept hearing twigs break and leaves brush, but no grunts or other animal sounds. I gradually walked faster, and finally I could see the light of my house in the distance. I couldn't take it anymore, so I started running. And so did the thing behind me. I was maybe 100 feet away from the door, and I swear I could feel breathing down my neck, but I never turned to look. I ran faster than any kid would run. By the time I reached the gleam of the house, I could finally hear wheezes from its throat. I made it to the door and slammed it shut behind me. After catching my breath, I decided to see if there was anything there. I was expecting to see the relief of nothingness, but instead, I saw a big, dark creature, the size of a bear, just sitting outside the beams of light, staring at me. I couldn't quite make it out in the dark, but the eyes, They glowed yellow. Nothing interesting happened for a while, and by the time I was 15, I believed it had all been in my imagination. Until some friends at school talked about the creature of the woods too. Being a teenager, I naturally felt the need to show how tough I was, and told them I didn't believe in it. In fact, I said, "I'm going to show you how much bullshit it is by challenging it." My friend from before said he would join me. Dusk came, and we found ourselves a nice clearing in the middle of the forest. At first, we just sat there, talking. But when it got darker, I started getting impatient. I said I didn't believe in it, but I was still waiting for something to happen. After a while, my friend said he had to go home. I think he was getting scared. I only grew even more impatient and started yelling out at the dark. "I don't believe in you," I said. "Well, come on, I'm right here," I said. I grabbed a rock and threw it out behind a tree. "Let's see if you're so frightening as you've had everyone else believe you are," I screamed out into the shadows. Right then, I heard something. It was the sound of breaking twigs. The hairs raised on my back, but I was determined that this had to be a person, or at least an animal of sorts. The breaking moved around the clearing as if to taunt me while I stood frozen in position. When it slowly came towards me, I started backing away a little. It was still too far away to see it, but I didn't want to leave yet. But I changed my mind when I thought, "Oh shit, it's tearing down trees in its path." I darted the fuck out of there, just like when I was a kid. This was all too familiar. Just that this time, it wasn't just twigs breaking. I ran all the way home, certain that it was right behind me. Like before, I locked the door behind me, but that wasn't enough this time. I could hear it slamming against the walls of the house. The whole place was shaking and trembling. Neither my sister nor my parents were home for the night. So, I was all alone. I armed myself with a knife and ran into my room to put on some music and to put it as loud as it went. I tried to block out the traumatizing event. The rumbling continued for, seemingly, hours, and it seemed as if the house could be ripped up at any moment. But it wasn't. After some time, it all stopped, right before my parents came back. The house hadn't suffered any damage, it seemed. My parents both acted as if everything was normal even. The final event was another year later, when another friend told me he had a huge crush on this girl in class, but that she was already in a relationship. He told me he was willing to give his soul for her. I jokingly told him he could try and sell it to the creature in the woods. He actually thought that was a good idea. I told him it wasn't, but it couldn't be helped. He was going to do it. Not even 1 week later, the girl left her boyfriend for him. They didn't stick together for long, however. After only a few weeks, they broke up, and he was torn to bits about it. Before that happened, he was one of the most energetic people I ever knew. He had so much going for him. And now, he's become a homeless junkie who digs through garbage bins to look for food. It's been years since I moved out of Dean, but I might return one day to try and figure things out. But I won't until I have a trusty companion to assist me. If I do, I'll tell you the rest of the story. Be me at 15, 2008, driving with Dad through Outback, driving the Plenty/Donahue Highway between the Stewart Highway in the Northern Territory and Boulia in Western Queensland. Approximately 700 kilometers unsealed road. See no one but a few trucks, maybe 3 in total the whole time. Blew 2 tires about 450 kilometers in, and didn't have any more spares, so had to drop our speed by a lot just to be safe. As a result, end up taking much longer to drive the length of this road than we otherwise would have. For background, there is a myth/a legend in the Boulia area of this so-called MinMin Light that harasses and follows travelers and tries to entice them to leave the road at night and follow it out into the desert. We'd traveled in the area plenty of times before and had never seen it, so we weren't really thinking about it. Be about 8:30 p.m. Pretty dark. Night sky out there was amazing, by the way. Any Australian tier, I highly recommend. Driving along at about 50 to 60 kilometers per hour to prevent any risk of another tire blowing. Light flashes in front of us like a shooting star, but right in front of the windshield. Dad and I, what the fuck, but keep on driving. Happens a few more times. Starts to hang around a bit longer each time. At one point, it hovered in front of us for about 30 seconds. Dad. Haha, must be the MinMin. I'm feeling a little on edge because a light appearing out of nowhere and hovering in front of the car is freaky as fuck. Dad doesn't give a fuck. He starts making verbal challenges to the light. He challenges it to try and lead him off the road. Light disappears. It appears again about 15 minutes later and hovers in front of the car again. Dad stops the car and gets out. The light starts moving off the road and stops about 10 meters off the road and hovers. Dad starts challenging the light again. Is that the best you've got? Picks up a rock and throws it at the light. All the while, I'm sitting in the car not knowing whether to shit myself with fear or piss myself, laughing at my dad fighting with the light. After a few seconds, the light disappears. At this point, we're pretty hungry, so we stay there for about half an hour and make something to eat. Every 5 minutes, Dad starts yelling out for the light. Bring it on! I'm waiting! The light never comes back the whole time. TLDR, my dad had a fight with a paranormal light myth and won. Be prepared. This is not a warning. This is a threat. We are coming. We will not be persuaded by your leaders or your people. You have been warned. This is not a warning. You have been warned. Aliens confirmed. Retarded. Well, guys, this is it. I'm finally getting the balls to end it. I've already determined how this is going to play out. I'm done living life, and right now my wires are completely shot, and I'm 10 feet deep in the hole. I've decided that living a life where she isn't there and is out banging another man isn't worth it. So, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sit in my room and order my favorite food. Then I'm going to write Google documents to each and every person in my life, telling them what I want them to know before I die. Then, I'll take a reasonable amount of oxy, just enough to OD, and listen to my favorite music. I'll lay in bed so the passing can be at least somewhat peaceful. I've tried everything, and I'm done living this way.
I just farted.